Okay, we are live. Well, we're not live actually. You're going to be watching this after the fact. So I want to welcome my friend Jake. Jake and I actually connected through my YouTube channel. He's done a lot of travel, and he's recently gotten back to the U.S. to try to continue to level up his programming skills. And I thought it'd be valuable to have a discussion and discuss his experience, also like the reentry process. I'm looking at possibly having to do that myself in the coming weeks. And so I thought it would just be valuable to cover that because, some people, they just don't know what that looks like. They don't know what that's going to be like. And so we should discuss it. So, Jake, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself.
Sure. Thanks for inviting me, Alex. I've been following Alex's channel for some time now before he's gotten as big as he is now. But I am Jake. I am from the US, grew up in the Midwest. I'm 37 years old. I have a background in actually English lit. I have a master's in composition and rhetoric and 6 years of wildland firefighting experience. So it seems like there's a contrast there, but I've been doing a lot of different things with my life. And during my off time, during my seasonal firefighting work, I would come to Asia and start traveling. And that's kind of how I got interested in this lifestyle.
Very cool, Jake. And yeah, you've had such a variety of experiences in your life. Um, there's a lot of contrast there. It's like a high contrast
Yeah.
lifestyle, right?
Yes.
And I just think that's so interesting. Like, so what got you interested in Asia, and what was your first trip to Asia like, and then kind of briefly, and then what was your more recent trip like?
So I just thought I wanted to do something radically different. And I went to Asia for the first time in 2014. I went to China, and that was quite overwhelming. I hadn't even been to Europe at that point. I was pre smartphones, pre translator apps. So I remember taking photos of the Lonely Planet and like showing it to my taxi driver to get around. So that was definitely one of the more extreme traveling experiences I've ever had. But to answer your question, like what got me interested, I think it was just a genuine curiosity and something that was considered to be the polar opposite of everything I had known. And I'm a big fan of like trial and error sometimes. You gotta just jump into it and learn the hard way, and that was one of those experiences where I just, like, jumped into the deep end. There were no baby steps involved, and I think unfortunately I associated Asia with that Chinese experience, so I kind of was afraid of Asia for some years after that, and it wasn't until I got into fire and I started working alongside a lot of guys who had spent time in Southeast Asia, they're like, "No, dude, you need to give it a real shot and go to a more, like, I guess, beginner friendly type of country like Thailand." And so I spent an entire summer getting an earful from this one coworker that's like, "You need to go here, you need to go here," and he sent me a whole Google document with all of his recommendations. And so I went and I just had the time of my life, and then it flipped the script, man. Like I just saved all of those recommendations and just already started planning for my trip the following year. And so that's kind of what my fire jobs turned into after a while. Like while I was passionate about the work, it turned into a means to make money just to go back to Asia. So
That
thanks.
That reminds me a lot of I'm a subscriber to a channel called Captain Trucker, and he and I have done a little bit of a collaboration. And he's very similar to you in that regard, in that he'll drive for an extended period of time, he'll save up his money, he'll go and spend a big chunk of time in Asia because there's limited career options that have that much flexibility as far as being able to work for X amount of time and then getting off a big chunk of time because I can't speak for other people, but it's a lot. It's a pretty big lift to go to Asia to just go for a week, right? And I don't blame people for doing that. I know people have finite vacation time, but it's so nice to get that immersion when you go for a month or longer than that. I think months a good kind of starting point, because you fully adjust to the time zone, you adjust to the local bacteria as far as just like diet goes. You have a chance to like slow down a little bit, which sometimes I think when we're on vacation from a corporate job, we can't really fully slow down. I remember when I did some travel when I was working a corporate job, it's like, yeah, okay, this was fun, but I'm thinking the whole time I'm going back to the grind. So yeah, very, very interesting that um, you've had this kind of variety of experiences. Could you speak to your more recent trip? Because actually, this is when we were able to meet in person, which is super cool. I know you visited a few countries. Could you talk about that and what that experience was like for you?
Yeah, sure. So in total, I was traveling for 6 months, and I started my trip in Taiwan. So the front and the back end of my 6 month journey were more travel intensive. But speaking to the front end, I landed in Taipei, and I actually connected with a friend via Facebook that I had no prior knowledge of, and had a really positive experience getting to know them. And they showed me around the city for, excuse me, sorry, I have a little cold, for about 5 or 6 days. And then I was able to connect with some other people that I'd known from a mutual friend that I met in Chiang Mai the year prior. So that was in Kaohsiung and Taichung and Tainan. So all of southern Taiwan, I got to explore through their train system. Was treated really well, had some delicious food, and no real negative experiences whatsoever. And then after 2 weeks there, I flew back to Thailand, and it had been almost exactly a year since I had left Thailand the previous time. And I lived in a apartment on near the En Route BTS station, and commuted to a school that was near Plonchit stop, where I was taking entry level Thai speaking courses with 8 other students, all from Asia. I was the only Western person in the class, so as expected, they were more than kind to me and kind of took me under their wing. And it was just a really cool school. I think I was paying close to like 225 for the month package, and really intensive, 3 hours a day, 5 days a week. Uh, Loved my teacher, Crew Tipsura. Shout out, she's watching this. But and then so after that month, I decided that the city wasn't quite my vibe. I was ready to switch it up. Flew to Kopayam for a week during Songkran. Uh, s- Loved that place, and from there moved to Koh Samui for another month. So I was in Bang Rak Beach area for that month, and that was okay. I don't know that I would go back and spend that amount of time. It felt really, um, I don't know. I guess over touristified, whatever the word is. I I would do it in a shorter trip next time. But so that was whenever I started researching more about Vietnam and Da Nang. At that point, I was only interested in one thing, which was improving my coding skills and marketing myself. And I was like, where can I go to live a budget lifestyle and learn more? So I went to Da Nang and spent 2 months there, where I met with you, and had a really positive experience throughout my time there. I made one YouTube video about it that I think I talk a lot about my experience there. And then from there, I went back to Thailand and spent a few weeks, and then closed out my trip in Japan. So I think
That
that's
sounds like a
total.
wild journey.
It was great, man. It was so good. Like in many ways.
out of the places that you've been, is there one country, and you could even specify city within a country, that if you were talking to somebody who's never been to Asia in general, maybe never even left the United States, or maybe never left Australia, which of those countries do you think is the most beginner friendly? And yeah, just if you could speak on that.
Yeah, in my experience, I would say Thailand with a fair amount of certainty, just based on the Western amenities and how kind the people are, and the focus on serving and taking care of you. I think that they're approachable and they're willing to kind of help you navigate things, and especially the younger groups of people speak a fair amount of English. So I think if you can get by with a certain level of initial discomfort and you have some sense of adventurousness, you can make it work, especially with all the translation apps and whatnot now. I did forget to mention that I went from Saigon through Cambodia back into Thailand. So Cambodia was another country that I got to experience. But I think Cambodia might be like the next step up. If you're looking for like a little bit calmer waters. I mean, I hate to say that about Thailand. There's some chaotic components to it, but um, if you do your research and you show up with a good attitude, I think you can have a good time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, the energy in Thailand is eclectic and very fast paced, and I love Thailand, but I can appreciate that sometimes we may find that some places have a little bit slower pace. Maybe for some people, they want something with a faster pace. Yeah, I've spent more time in Thailand than any other country, so have a lot of love for Thailand. But yeah, I mean, it's nice to get a variety. I feel like the experiences you've had in Taiwan, you've been to Cambodia, you've been to Vietnam. You're able to compare and contrast these different countries and get us, and also you've been to Japan. What you like about each one, and what you're not as preferential to, and then decide like, okay, this is what I've done, this is what I haven't done, what do I want to try to add to the mix next time? So I think that's such a good way to look at it. And I'm a big proponent of the discovery trip, not necessarily committing. Okay, I read about this one country, I'm going to go there and I'm done. But get a taste of this, like almost like a buffet. Southeast Asia, there's so many cool places to see that you kind of, I think a lot of people would benefit from trying this and trying that. Even within Thailand, try the big city, try the small city, try a lot of different things, and you'll get a stronger sense of what you like and don't like. Um, and yeah, I think that's just such a great variety that you've gotten to experience on your trip. Um, Now, kind of moving on from there, and this, I know it could be, I don't know if I'd say a difficult subject, but it could be a little bit stressful. Um, you recently returned back to the US. I'm looking at having to do the same soon. And we had a little bit of a conversation about culture shock. What kind of culture shock did you notice coming from you departed from Japan to arriving in California?
Yeah, so I keep describing it as mild culture shock, but it is significant, and I suppose there's like an intuitive feeling of culture shock where you just experience it like energetically, or you just, from the way the people behave, the pace of life, the pace of walking, the expectation that things need to be done in a quicker manner, which is a little unsettling after you kind of acclimate to the more calm approach of Southeast Asia. That combined with just small little twinges of like, oh, that's annoying that I just paid $100 to fill up my truck with gas. So you just feel like you're hemorrhaging money, which you don't feel that way whenever you're in the American fishbowl and you're swimming it. Well, I suppose you could, but just when you have the comparison of being in Asia for 6 months coming back, that's one thing that I experience. And I think that the people tend to be a little bit um, what's the word, like, abrasive. You notice things a little bit more, and there's, like, just this expectation that you have to be a little more callous, to either judgments or, like, maybe harsh words or whatever. Like, for instance, I was called wimpy by a barista for buying, a chamomile tea rather than a espresso shot. I was just like, "Okay, well, that would definitely never happen in Vietnam," but things things like that, you're just like, "Oh, yeah, 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 I gotta have my guard up a little bit," and then, you like, people talk louder, people talk faster, so those are kind of the, original noticings, you know?
Yeah, I definitely have noticed that too when I came back from Latin America several years ago. Unfortunately, I'm sure I'll notice it, whenever I make it back from this trip. Um, I don't know, it's just you don't notice when you're there, right? And if you haven't been outside the country, you don't really think about it. One of my close friends is actually visiting Thailand for the first time right now. He had never been outside of the US, and he's noticing a lot of what you're talking about
Mhm.
as far as comparing Thailand to back home, where he's like, man, people here are just like so nice and so friendly and really chill. And I think about, being in the work setting and getting constantly corrected by leadership. No, do it this way. No, do it this way. No, do it this way. This is wrong. This is wrong. This is wrong. And just not having that experience. Now, some of that, of course, is that we're not working in Thailand. We don't have permission to do so. Um,
True.
but
The other
but
thing
some
I'll
of
men
that, yeah.
Sorry. The other thing I'll mention is
Oh,
just
go for
that
it.
this it feels like there's, like, a subtle competitiveness just to everything. Like, in maybe it's, like, basic conversation or you're interacting with, strangers, talking about, like, some kind of sports team, and then they're almost, like, wanting to, like, up the ante or, like, show that they know a little bit more about that team, or it's just things that you don't ever deal with in Southeast Asia.
You feel like in the US, people are more status conscious,
Yeah.
on average compared
Yes.
to your experiences in Southeast Asia.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely have noticed that myself, just in conversations sometimes with people back home, where, they want to turn the conversation into a competition. It's like, what are we,
Yeah.
there is no competition. Like, I
Yeah.
don't,
What's
I
happening?
find this, yeah, what's happening? Like, I find this a lot. You talk about how you're in California. I'll talk to people in my home state. Oh, but our home state's better. It's not a competition, right? They're so different from one another, that they're in two very different worlds. I mean, um, yeah, yeah. It's just a really I think part of it is called what they call like reverse culture shock. So you have the culture shock when you go to Asia, and you're surprised at how friendly people are and how relaxed people are, and then you have the reverse when you come back and you're like, oh wow, like I didn't notice any of this stuff, and now it's just like so readily apparent to me. Um, and yeah, so I'm trying to think of what else is top of mind. Um,
Well, I just speaking on what you're saying, I credit Southeast Asia with kinda helping me dissolve those parts of myself that were hyper competitive. I mean, while I think there's, like, positive qualities to having that ambitious part of you, I also am grateful that I got to spend time in places that, showed me a different approach. So, coming back, my home country looks different.
Yeah, and you've talked to me about your athletic background, and when you're an athlete, you're trained to compete, right? You want to beat the other team. You want to be the faster individual. You want to be, the stronger individual. You want to be able to have perhaps just like rapid movement, that fast twitch energy, and so you're really trained to kind of think, how do I win? And then you go to Southeast Asia, and like nobody cares how fast you walk. I remember in Chiang Mai, I when I landed in Chiang Mai, I'm just walking really fast and then realizing like, why am I, why am I trying to like
Yeah,
outpace somebody on the sidewalk? Nobody cares,
that's a
and so you do
that's a
notice
really
that competition.
that's a really good point about the walking. And at first, it feels like really annoying that you're just kind of trying to get around everyone, and then you sort of, after some time, you kind of fall in line with their flow of things, and then you come back here, and it's like you're gonna get run over.
Yeah, there's so many times I remember back in the States, I'd be driving along and somebody would pass me really quick and just fly by, and then we'd pull up to the same light. And it's like, come on, these lights are designed to maintain a certain flow of traffic. They're not designed to be like beaten or whatever. But yeah, people get in their heads that they've got to compete. Um, so I know we've talked somewhat about your interest to come back to Southeast Asia. You know, I I'm curious, is there anywhere in particular that you want to focus on in your next journey over here?
Yeah, great question. I am particularly interested in spending more time in Japan after my short stay there this time. But I also would like to go to Philippines for the first time so that I can see what that's like. I haven't been there quite yet, so it would be an interesting experience, and hopefully get a flavor of what life is like there.
I think it's weird, but the Philippines feels in some ways like there's less culture shock than some of the mainland countries because there's so
Really?
much English here. So when you land at the airport, you can talk to people in English. You walk down the street, or you get a cab in town. You're able to speak English to the driver. You're able to speak English. You go to McDonald's. Uh, you walk, or you see people wearing like NBA jerseys. Um, it's uh, it's really interesting. Like it's different. It's certainly not like being in the US, but it's also not like, you're landing in Bangkok and you see Thai characters everywhere and you hear people speaking Thai and like you see, you just get a strong sense you're somewhere very, very different. To me, it's almost at times like the uncanny valley where I feel like sometimes I'm halfway in between the US, Southeast Asia. It is more laid back. I'm not going to discount that. But part of it is that you do have the English, and you have a lot of Americans here. So I think it's definitely valuable to check out. I don't think it's for everybody, but certainly there's some cool places here. I will mention too, like it's not as expensive as I thought it was going to be. Everybody's always warning me, "Oh, Philippines, so expensive, so expensive." I believe it's pricier in Manila or Cebu, but I'm down here in Dumaguete, and I know Dumaguete is top of mind for a lot of people. It's reasonable. It's not the cheapest place in the country. It's not the cheapest place in the world, but I mean, I found it to be pretty decent value for money.
Hmm. Yeah, it's been interesting, and I've really enjoyed keeping up on your videos since you've moved back there. And I'm curious how, like, are there times where you feel like you like get tricked into feeling like you're still in the US, or is it never apparent? Like, is it, you know what I'm trying to say?
Occasionally, I see somebody fresh off the plane, and I can tell because they're always walking really fast. They're
Uh-huh.
they're always walking really fast, wherever it is. They're walking fast in the mall. They're walking fast, like on the boulevard. You can see them kind of like just the aggression in their bodies, like the kind of anxious energy. They're looking around too, like kind of. I don't know if it's just me. I feel like in the US, we're kind of stressed out. So we're trying to like look for hidden threats, like, is there somebody coming around the corner? Is there, I don't, there's a dark alley there. Is there somebody that's going to, come out of there? Like, uh, and so you see this kind of just like agitated body movement. I also have seen some foreigners just like lose, particularly like at a visa service. I'm not going to mention them, but somebody who seemed very stressed out. I'll put it that way. And then I overheard him mention, "I just got here," and he just seemed really wound up tight. And I get it, right? I'm not going to sit here and put the gentleman down. I've been fresh off the plane too. I've been super wound up, ready to like get settled in, but also having that pent up energy, that energy that you feel like when when you're just trying to stay on top of things. You got 11,000 bills and you got, 24 hours in a day and you're trying to figure out how to pay them. Um, but yeah, I've definitely noticed, that's when I get the strongest sense. Oh, wow, because I can understand them, right? Like I could, somebody who's speaking English, I can understand what they're saying. And so I can really, I don't know. I love the country. I love the Philippines
Mm,
overall. I think it's going to be the place for me long term.
yeah.
Presuming, I'm able to maintain in compliance with the visas, which I believe I'm capable of doing. But it's uh, it's also, it's closer, right? Like if you want to fly to California from the Philippines, you're talking about you fly to Manila and then it's like 12 hours to LA. So you shave off some time from like going from Thailand or Cambodia, even Vietnam or Indonesia. But yeah, anyway, I do want to dive into a little bit, and we'll go from a few more minutes here. But you've talked to me about your programming, and
Mhm.
I'm curious: is this something where you're interested to offer these services to people and to provide your insight? I know you've been grinding away at it, and then maybe if you could just kind of share like what you're focused on, because I think some people in the audience they might want to pick your brain, and then also somebody might be interested to bring you on board or to yeah.
Yeah, I would be thrilled. I'm absolutely open to talking with anyone who has an interest in coding and talking about my experience learning. At this point, I feel proficient at designing certain types of websites. I'm in the middle of a JavaScript curriculum, and I've been hard at it for about 4 to 5 months now, spending 2, 3, sometimes 4 hours a day studying. So my first month or two was spent learning HTML, CSS, which is the common building block for building a website. And then from there, I'm getting into the more complex curriculum of JavaScript. And then my next steps will be learning React and Ember and APIs. So I'm doing my best to equip myself with the skills to make myself marketable and useful for companies. So that's why I'm here back in Tahoe, California. I have a really kind mentor who's been doing it for almost 3 decades, who's taken me under his wing and has been kind of hurting my brain a little bit with all that he knows. But it's been, I feel really fortunate and lucky to have this resource right now. And I'm trying to make the most of it. And my goal is to have a nice job here in the next 6 to 8 months, but we'll see what happens. But to give you a little bit of a timeline of how I've done it, I first started watching YouTubes. I think you and I are both YouTube scholars, and that's how I've educated myself on pretty much everything in my adult life, at least last 10 years, I guess. But I started out watching YouTube videos, and then I took some free code camp introductory classes on CSS, HTML, and JavaScript. And then I looked into this Udemy course, excuse me, and it's taught by a man named John Schmiedman, and it's a 50-hour course, highly reviewed, and I'm about halfway through that now. So I also have been making my own portfolio and showcasing my projects there. So maybe I could send my portfolio to you at some point.
Yeah, I'd love to check it out, and definitely, I want to provide links to all these things in the description of this video so that anybody who's watching this, they can reach out to you and chat with you and potentially create some interesting discussion and dialogue and maybe inspire some of them too, right? I mean, I think that there's
Yeah.
so much opportunity for coders and programmers. Um, and I think that, I think it's just like it's something I looked into doing some years back because I felt like it was the ideal job to be a digital nomad. I'm like, how much better can you get, right? You literally all you need is your computer and you've got your workstation. You can, if it fits in your backpack, you take that with you anywhere you want to go in the world, and you're able to be productive. Um, and so, do you foresee, and just kind of moving toward the future, and want to be mindful of your time because I know you're still like you're putting in your time every day. Um, what kind of how do you envision you mentioned you wanna look and have a job in the 6 to 8-month range. What do you envision as far as just, like, your location? You don't have to specify country, but kinda how do you envision yourself what let's say you once you that first paycheck hits your bank, where do you wanna be at, and how do you wanna be living?
Oh man, I love thinking about that. So first off, I would be willing to take a good entry level job. I suppose anywhere, if it was a hybrid sort of situation, in order to get my bearings and gain experience, I'd be willing to remain in the U.S. or elsewhere, just to get that primary experience. But my ultimate goal is to be fully untethered to a location. So to answer your question, what that would look like for me, I would like to get all of my things out of a storage unit that I'm paying for, and then just go. So I'd have one rolling luggage, one backpack, and then I would be uh, spending 1, 2, maybe 3 months in each country, and still feeling out where I wanted to stay. I don't have like a long-term trajectory plan for one location, but I feel adaptable enough to know that if I find the place that I enjoy being, then I can make a more sustainable life for myself there. And in the meantime, if I'm making the wage that I want to make, then I'll be accruing more income to potentially make a down payment on a property back in the US to have as a residence to go back to. So that's sort of the trajectory I'm looking at, and I see myself in Asia for a long-term period of time.
And that's a great option where let's say you got a down payment built up, you put it down on a property, you could rent it out, you could hire a
Mhm.
property manager and you could rent it out for however long you want. And then when you decide, hey, I want to go back for a while for whatever reason, in line with what your needs are, hey, I'm going to come back, I'm going to clear it out for 6 months, a year, I'm going to, catch up with people, maybe host some friends who want to come visit from out of town, wherever that may be. You really got a lot of optionality there in what you're talking about, and I think that's the best way to do it. Is like, that's what's cool. I think about Asia is it adds options. You've got the option of like, hey, I worked as a programmer for a year and I saved up X thousands of dollars, and that's going to buy me X amount of time or Y amount of time in Southeast Asia. And then I'm going to use that time to do this. And so that's what's so beautiful to me is I think a lot of people, they think, oh, you're just traveling, you're just having a good time. No, I'm buying time to think. That's something that we talked about
Mhm.
that I thought was so powerful was like, it's such a luxury to be able to assess where you're at and where you want to go. And we don't have that luxury in the US all the time because we have bills and we have responsibilities and the pace is so fast. We're just trying to stay on top of stuff. We're not thinking, where am I going to be in 6 months? Where am I going to be in a year? We're just like, I need to keep my job. I need to keep, I need to. So the pace is just so fast. We're not always able to assess. Well, yeah, I think this has been a great conversation, Jake. I really appreciate you taking the time to kind of fill us in on what that's looked like, talking a little bit about the reverse culture shock. I do want to give you the final word. Do you have any final thoughts to share in the next few minutes before we wrap up for this evening and morning?
Yeah, no, I just would like to say thank you, Alex, for all of the content, inviting me on, and I hope that you continue to promote what you're promoting, and you're providing a valuable service to expats and digital nomads. So I appreciate your channel. And if anyone out there is curious in what I'm doing, I have a YouTube channel as well, and it's Jacob Travels. And maybe Alex can provide a link for you. I'd be happy to have more subscribers as usual, and I'm usually very responsive if you want to comment and start a conversation. But thanks again, Alex. Really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Everybody check out Jacob Travels. Reach out to Jake. He's definitely a responsive guy, really engaging, and somebody I feel very fortunate to have met through the interwebs. And so, yeah, thanks so much, everyone, for watching today. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel down below. Comment, what do you think? What have you learned today from our discussion? This is ideally the first of many. This is the first time trying this format out. Let us know if you like the format, if you don't like the format, what we can do better. I think feedback's a gift, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day or weekend or week ahead, wherever you're at, wherever time it's at, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.